Good evening and welcome to the studio tonight. That sounds like I was about to start a TV programme, which I guess I am in a way. However, welcome everybody, good evening. Doing something different to yesterday tonight. Tip that down a little bit. See if we can get a bit more light on the subject without going silly. Lighting, terrible thing. Terrible curse of creative people is lighting. Trying to get it all to work. I intended to do some jewellery making tonight with some chainmail, amongst other things. He says, thinking, where on earth did I put the order that I just got today? It's around here somewhere, because I will want it shortly. I know it's around here somewhere. How can you lose a bag full of stuff? Now that's really silly. Fear Reaper, good evening. Welcome to the studio this evening. Be careful. And Fluffy Twigler, good evening also. Welcome to the studio this evening. I can tell you two apart because of the colours. We finished the... there they are. Big bag of stuff. We finished we finished something last night. The locomotive. And so I'm going to do some jewellery for a bit. Got lots of pretty things. I got an order through today, so I've got some nice coloured rings. I like sky blue. I also quite like royal blue. And some Christmas colours. Red and green. And since I almost ran out of yellow, I've got 2 packs of yellow, some more blue rings, and I've got some pretty crystals. You might not see those, but we'll look at those in a minute. Creams, good evening. Welcome to the studio. I noticed you'd followed me last night. Thank you very much for that. I haven't seen you before in the stream, but of course seen you often with Steve-O. So I've got some pretty Swarovski, something like that anyway, crystals, which I hope to make a bracelet with tonight. But I'm going to finish off a couple I've already started. Yes, I've got some lovely silver, these aren't silver, they're silver coloured rings, so purple. Lovely shade of purple. I'm assuming you mean these, which are blue. These are purple and these are blue. And no, you can't tell the difference on camera. Okay. Possibly, yes. You know, my memory is terrible. I'm looking at one of these days. You know what I'm going to have to really do is somehow put a camera there, because that's where my chat is. Oh, I suppose I can put chat down here, which would perhaps be better because that's more of a natural when I'm doing crafting. Yeah, so they're blue, they're purple, and unfortunately, I really wish the camera would show them. But anyway, I'm showing off on the desk as you can see. So I want those blue ones. Yeah, but these are stretchy rings. These matte looking colours are stretchy rings, like for this particular bracelet here, which is stretchy. So I've got 2 stretchy ones to finish. I may or may not need the white, and then I was thinking maybe of doing something with a Christmas theme, so the red and green maybe they don't look quite as good in this stretchy as they do when they're shiny, so we may or may not use those. But one of these days I'll get organised before I actually start a stream. One of these days. So I just thought, since I've been sort of taking photographs and trying to work out other bits and pieces for the website, which I'm going to try and get done at some point shortly. I've sort of had most of samples of most of the chains that I've made out. I am missing one that I can't find for the life of me. I've got a titanium chain made out of anodized titanium, and I cannot find it. It sort of it looks like this, but bigger or longer rather. It's sort of a matte colour, and they have amazingly hard rings to work at, titanium rings, because titanium is quite strong. So whilst I was working with them this afternoon, I've just laid them out on the desk, but I'm going to put them away now. Yeah, I am sort of looking to two things. One is Christmas presents, and Christmas presents always take longer than you think they're going to take. So I'm kind of determined to do that early this year, especially if I like to make Christmas presents, whatever it is, whether it's painting, crafting, jewellery making now. Then I do like to get those in early if I can, but I never succeed. I'm usually up at sort of 2 o'clock in the Christmas morning finishing off something. But I am also hoping that to start maybe to sell some of not these but more of these, so that it will support some of the stuff that the other crafting, well, this as well. Because when you start buying blocks of wood, scraper board, ink, that sort of stuff, it's amazing how it adds up in price. And of course chains, which I enjoy making, are expensive as well. But so I'm kind of looking towards that, and I know I've already been asked to go to something for a Christmas fair type thing. And maybe see if they'd like me to sell some of these things at their Christmas fair. So anyway, yes, thinking ahead, because when I come to a fair, of course, Christmas fair, of course, I'm going to have a bit of stock. So just whilst I'm just putting them away, just show you some of them before I actually start crafting again. So this I like to give these things names. This one, sorry, my PC chortling at me. This one has got a name called, well, at the moment I think it's the right name, which is called Lagoon Morning. So you've got a really dark blue lagoon with the pale pink of the morning sunlight. You're currently crocheting a hat thing. That sounds interesting, Creams. It's a long time since I've done any crocheting, which might surprise you that I actually have, but I used to do it. I've not done any for 20 odd years though. But I have done some. And I've probably still got the crochet needles around somewhere. I'm not about to start and do any more, but perhaps you ought to, as well as the games, Creams, perhaps you ought to join us in creative and demonstrate some crocheting of hat things. This is what they call a byzantine necklace. It's So the Byzantine refers to basically the way in which the rings or weave amongst each other. So that sort of folded back design that you can see there is called Byzantine. No, I've done a fair few things, Fluffy Twiglet, not everything. I don't do glass blowing, for example. That's another Byzantine. These were special. My wife designed that. It's got specific meaning to her as the colour sequence in these. This one, well, this one gets called Smarties. Don't know if people are familiar with Smarties, whether they're attempts to say that and fails. Not quite sure I follow that one, Creams. Those of you who may not be familiar with Smarties, Smarties, certainly in the UK, is a confection, sweets, little tiny, not so tiny, but there's multicoloured little, I hate calling them tablets, but that sort of thing, which come in a tube. So if you sort of tip them out all over the place, it kind of looks a bit like you've just tipped out a lot of Smarties, which is where the name came from. Because they're all, you know, I think off the top of my head there's 7 different colours used in this, and they're actually all in the same sequence. I was about to say they're mixed up, but they're not quite. That was the second ever necklace. Second ever thing I made, which was a necklace. That was built from a kit. There was one of the other Twitch broadcasters who makes chainmail helped me. I got interested from there, and that was as a result of that interest. And the first one that I ever made, which was, well, both that necklace and this were a present for my wife for her birthday. And this is a nice sort of golden lavender colour. I wish this camera would support the colours a lot better. If you're familiar with tennis, you might not recognise these colours, because this is terrible. Let me see if I can zoom the camera. Now, of course, you probably won't recognise these colours because it looks like blue and green, but in actual fact it's purple and green, which you might recognise as the colours for Wimbledon, and hence the name of this particular bracelet, which is called Wimbledon Wishes. And this one's the same design as that one, but just in different colours. So this one is called Morning Breaks, because you've got the pale blue of the sky and the pale pink of the early morning sunshine. And again, another morning themed one. This one is early sunrise, exactly the same thing again, with the pale pink and the very light blue. This time though it has a silver clasp, so that, if you like, it represents the moon just as it disappears from the sky. So sterling silver clasp on that. And I've got 2 more. This one is all pink. It's an anklet, so it's a bit bigger than the others. But this one gets called Tickled Pink for obvious reasons. It's pink. And this one has a rose gold, or sorry, what's called a filled rose gold clasp on it. And this one is actually yellow, not gold. but its name is simply gold. And it has a filled gold clasp. So then I'm not using gold plated or silver plated things like clasps and toggles, because there are people, and my wife is one of them, who within a few hours the skin oils can actually dissolve the gold plate off the toggle, and reduce it to the copper that's underneath. Sometimes that copper effect is rather nice, but if you want it to be gold, it's not. So but anyway, that's a collection. It's not all of them, but it's most of them. More showing up. Well, I got to show off. That's anybody that broadcasts on Twitch has got to be showing off at some level, haven't they? Really. I mean, I can show off even more if you like, with all the bits that I've played with and just trying out things to see whether they worked. That's what all these little bits are. Just sort of trying something new, so like an inch length of chain, just to see whether it works. So I get to learn things like with this, for example, this one. This is this one this one in Christmas colours, he says, working out which way to move on the camera. This is the way these rings go together is called full Persian, but now I understand Fluffy Twiggler. I'm just enjoying the you having kidding, if you see what I mean, kidding you back a little bit. But the size of rings that I've used here, and it's I say size, but it's both the diameter of the ring and the diameter of the wire that matter. It's too stiff to work as a bracelet. It would work very nicely as earrings, sort of. Yeah, earrings, because they're nice. It's a stiff sort of thing, or to make like a pendant, for example, maybe a cross, or just to hang them from a pendant, would work really nice. But as a bracelet, it's too stiff. So these are kind of experiments that I try. Here's another one which is an experiment which was reasonably well. This actually is called Turkish round, and it's a bit like Byzantine, and most people would probably call it that, but Byzantine has 4 sides, if you see what I mean. It's like a square box. This actually has got 6 sides, so it's a triangle type of idea, which makes it a little bit more rounder. Now this ring size is only just okay for this. If I show you just as an example to show you, and this is why I try it, this is exactly the same thing, but as you can see, it sort of falls apart. It doesn't really hold its shape. You can't tell what it is. So that you know, I learned, if you like, I can't use that particular type of ring. Another attempt using a slightly smaller ring. This one isn't too bad. It's not bad when you lay it down. A few of these, what they call weaves, work okay when they're sort of under what they call under tension. That they're held like you might sort of hold one up to look at. They'll sit reasonably well. But if you put them down sometimes on a table or in your hand, or if you're wearing a necklace, then sometimes they sort of collapse slightly, and this blue one collapses slightly and it looks a little bit untidy. It's not bad, but it's only just acceptable, or to me it's only just acceptable. And the similar with this big one, actually, it's only just acceptable as a weave. It holds its position adequately, shall we say, but generally speaking, that's why I try these little sections. It tells you a great deal really quickly. This one which is an even smaller ring, that holds its shape really well. So that's a nice example of Turkish round. These are okay, and that one's terrible. It just looks like a pile of rings. So these are kind of fun experimenting things, and slightly different one here, which is almost looks like a tube or a straw type of thing. This camera's actually upside down, relatively speaking. I keep moving in the wrong direction. This is called round mail, and it is almost round. It's like a tube, which is quite an interesting design. Nice and quite, I was going to say dainty in a way, because it is quite small. But occasionally you get, I make mistakes. And sometimes they turn out to be happy little accidents, and sometimes they don't. This, for example, is it's actually turned out to be what they call a triple spiral, and it's not fantastically very well at holding its shape, just because really it has to be kept twisted basically to work properly. But this is what they call a triple spiral, and my intention when I made this was not to make this, but actually to make that. And I got it wrong, and I came out with the triple spiral. So sometimes you get happy little accidents. Let me put that one away to one side. And there are other things like this, for example, which I was trying, and again this is one that can't be used as a bracelet just because it's too stiff. I suppose technically you could almost use this like a bangle if it was obviously long enough, because it will bend, but it doesn't flow like one of these does. It really does hold its shape. So again, it's kind of like earring material or pendant material, but not really bracelet material. So let me clear my desk. And sometimes I just try, you saw the blue, the Lagoon Morning. This is the different size of the same thing. So this is a lot smaller ring size. Anyway. And that's a different version of the same thing again, but this time instead of all the rings being the same size, the middle ones are slightly smaller. Just playing about with ideas. Actually, that might turn into quite a nice sort of pendant. There you go. Coming up with ideas as I work with these things. Let me clear the desk. Clear the desk. Right, I was working, I want to finish this one, and I want to finish that one. So that's what these rings are for this one, and I've got a feeling that's the I left enough for these yellow stretchy rings to complete that, but I've got some more. And these are a royal blue, and actually these are a really rich blue colour, so quite like those. So I've got 2, 4, 6, 7. Why have I got an odd number? I don't know. That suggests I need at least 8 to finish this off. Well, I think I intended it to be a 7-inch bracelet. With it being stretchy, you see, it can, obviously it stretches. So I'm going to finish, well, I think I was going to put at least, I was probably going to use 8, I think, judging by the what I can see on there. So I shall get just one more out to make 8, and then we'll see how we go from there. So, pliers. I might as well tell you something about this while I'm doing, I suppose. I've got these are called chain nose pliers. They've got a thin nose because they're meant for working with chains, and the idea of that thin nose is you can get in a chain, whereas something with a fairly thick wide nose like this actually physically wouldn't fit with inside one of these sort of rings. So that's why they're called chain nose, and these are called flat or just generally pliers. But the important part about both of these is that they are smooth inside. There's no serrations, no grips. Sometimes it's worth putting a bit of tape over them, which I might do at some point, but the chain nose pliers, standard pliers, although these have been modified to reduce the tension on the spring, otherwise it was too hard, it hurt my hands. And I've got these chain nose pliers. Now these are a special pair of pliers because if you look at if I close them both, you'll see the hopefully you'll see the difference. This is a V shape and these are parallel to each other, and as they close, the parallel ones stay parallel, but the V-shaped ones, obviously the V just gets smaller. And the reason for that, and the reason why I've got these, is if I get something round and I hold it, it gets held in just one tiny position. And if you, with rings sometimes, they have a tendency to slip out like that. And when it happens, you'll hear the pliers snap shut. Whereas the parallel jaw ones will hold across the complete length. So they hold a lot more securely than these. And if you can see that, I can wobble that backwards and forwards. And here, doesn't move at all. The tools of chainmail. Oh, well, there is one more I don't use very often, but bent nose. Sometimes very useful for sort of getting in things. And a very other useful tool to be used, especially for what I'm doing here. One of those. A toothpick. That's great for sort of just helping you sort of pick out rings and just direct things just where you want them. Right, I'm going to adjust this up a little bit because otherwise I'm going to end up working off frame. And I'm already doing that with my face. This thing has moved. There we go. Sorry about the light, but you can either see what I'm doing or see my face. I think you'd rather see what I'm doing. Right. So, what I'm going to do is do what they call open a number of these rings. So I want 2, 4, 6, 12, 18, well, at least 18 I think. So all I'm doing is I hold a ring with one pair of pliers. I hold it fairly close to where you can just see these the ring is sort of got a cut in it, if you like, and it's offset slightly. That's just how they're made. But opening a ring is making that gap wider like that. Closing it will be making it so that they get virtually invisible. Now then, if I remember how I want to do this, it's a little while since I've done. So what I actually want to do with some I open and some I'll close. So the closing is about twisting the ring so slightly that when it is closed, and I wish this camera would focus, the idea is that you can't actually see, where's the focus there, you can't actually see the join in the ring. Now I haven't actually moved anything. If I hold it really carefully, the join is just where my fingernail is. Tip it that way. You might just be able to see it. See the it's slightly there, and that's because it's just slightly moved. What you get with these rings is the metal actually has a memory, and part of the act of closing a ring, and you might see me do it, or you might not have realised what I'm doing, is, and I'll exaggerate it here, assuming I was holding this ring, I actually twist it past where I want it to go, twist it back, past and back until I line it up. That kind of does two things. One is it resets that memory as to where it should be, and the second is it sort of hardens the twist point a little bit, so that when I stop twisting it, it wants to stay where it is, and it resets that memory. And if I do it right, it will stay there. If I don't reset that memory, what will happen over the next couple of hours is the ring will sort of slightly misalign itself. So it'll just open up slightly, twist slightly, and it will become, you'll be able to, if you look really carefully, you'll be able to see them. Right. Yeah. Now I'm having to think on my feet, so to speak, at this point, because when I weave these together, I'm just going to put a fan on, excuse me. When I weave these together, these obviously I can open and close. The stretchy rings I can't. So I have to weave them in at the right time, in such a way that I don't need to try and open them up, because I'm not going to do it. Or rather, I could open them up, but I won't close them again. It's alright, you enjoy that fluffy twiglet. I'll just do another set of rings, and then I'll weave some of them onto the bracelet, and if I need any more, I shall add them in. If the humidity goes up much more here in the studio, I'm going to make myself look daft, because I'm going to put a headband on. I've now got an air conditioner and a fan going in here, so incidentally you might just hear, if I ever shut up that is, you might just occasionally hear these rings click as I'm closing them. That click is basically the ring ends catching as they go past each other. Generally speaking, it's a good sound. It means that they're basically closed as right up, and they're sort of pressed tight against each other. So that's kind of a good sound to hear. Okay, we've got 6 there. Now then, I have to remember how to do this, so I want to take one of these. Is that? Yes, it is focused, and put it through there. And then I put these 2 closed blue rings on that same ring that I had. Get hold of it carefully and then close the ring. So I've now got a pair of rings joined onto the end. Well, with this weave everything's done in 2s, so I add in a second ring like that, and then the weave is formed by bending those 2 back and getting hold of it like that. The Big Brother 7. I wonder what program you're interested in watching. Welcome to the studio this evening. So I'll just leave that through there, just it holds it in place, but it actually doesn't matter. I can weave those back fairly quickly. I'm now going to make up a what's called a unit, and it's a unit of this particular weave, the byzantine weave. And I figured, actually I was having a bit of problem when I first did this, feeding these yellow rings through in the right place, until I realised after I'd done it and run out of rings that I probably didn't need to do it that way. So I'm just having a practice doing it a different way, which is to make a unit like this, completely standalone from the chain itself, which makes it a little bit easier to do because I'm not having to feed that sort of yellow ring through. Yeah, just make sure I've got that the right way. Because if I've done that right, then if I turn those 2 back and I nick my cocktail stick out of there, oops, this is where you need patience, and I'm beginning to think maybe this wasn't such a good idea, but this is part of learning. Yeah, maybe this wasn't such a good idea doing it this way. But that's the unit. So what I should be able to do now is take that through there and take it through this exactly the same position on this chain, joining the 2 together, which saves me having to sort of fish around to get the yellow flexible rings in the right position, which was quite hard when I was doing it the last time. Although I must admit it's quite fiddly working like this, and I may revert back to doing it the way I was doing it, especially if this proves to be difficult to get this particular ring through, which is the second one, because as I mentioned before, everything's done in pairs. Yeah, this is really awkward to do that way, so I might revert back to doing it the other way. So there, that's another unit done. So I'm going to revert back to doing it the way I was doing it before. I'll just show you the difference mainly, and we'll see. I need some more of these blue rings. Opening and closing. Too close there. One of the things that never ceases to amaze me is how these things actually manage to get themselves. When they're made, they are made completely separately from each other. They're all separate. But when you put them in a bag and jumble them about a bit, they all get connected up somehow. And basically the rings have to be in exactly the right position for them to join like that, but somehow they manage it. So we've got 4 there, so I'll just do a bit at a time. So one of those through there. Actually, I'll hold it that way. I'll try and keep this on camera, and then we'll put 2 blue rings on. And I put the second ring through as well. Again, everything in pairs. A lot of weaves actually do use pairs of rings, so everything's doubled up. So other than it being fiddly, once you've learnt the way the pattern goes together, it's shall we say, a relatively easy thing to do. But it does get quite fiddly, especially with the smaller sized rings, and I do like working with the little rings. So the big chunky bracelets are nice, but sometimes the little tiny ones are as well. Now hopefully you can see that why chain nose pliers are quite important for doing this. That ring keeps slipping. Is it okay? Yes, it is. There we go. I've got a feeling I've just done something wrong. No, I haven't. Well, I kind of have, but you get into a pattern, and sometimes you just forget what you're doing in a way, and that's what I've just done at that point there. I mean, if I've done something wrong, what I can always do is just open the rings up and correct it. But what I meant to do was to put them on in a slightly different sequence, and I didn't. So. Now you might not be able to see it, but there's a ring here. You can just see that slight sliver of silver just there. That's one of these rings that has relaxed back a little bit. So I just need to realign it. I may have got this wrong. We'll find out. Doing this weave is relatively easy, but the problem is trying to remember, because of the fact that I've got the yellow rings in there. I think I've done them in the wrong place. Yeah, I have. Can I correct that? I don't know. Let's see if I can. This is as a sort of a real requirement when you're using these flexible rings, to think ahead. I'm not sure this is going to work. I might have to undo this last thing here and do it again. Oh no, that one's gone through. Okay. Mind you, I still might have to do it again. Okay, so that's the hard way of doing it. Where are you from? The UK. Yes, Fluffy Twiglet is correct. I'm from Yorkshire in the UK. In some ways, Fluffy Twiglet, because that was okay. I did it wrong, and it was a bit awkward with the cocktail stick trying to fiddle that ring into the right position. But it was working. So it didn't feel like I needed patience to do that. It's when I might have been spending 10 minutes trying to do that, and maybe I did spend 10 minutes trying to do that, and it's still not working. That's when I kind of find I need patience. How long is this? That's 7.5, so we will add about another ½ inch. So that'll take it to about 7 3/4. So I think we're probably, yeah, I think probably we've got that one to the right length. So what I'm going to do now is join it up. So 2 open ones for that side, 2 open ones for the other side. 2 closed ones for that. Yeah, it is focused, isn't it? And then a final 2 which will be used to join the 2 halves together. 1, 2. Right, so I shall work from both ends. So 1 open ring and 2, if I can get hold of it, 2 closed rings. And as before, I'll double that up. Gotta make sure I put the rings through in the right direction, because if I twist it then it doesn't look right. Okay, I'll fasten those, I'll shape those in a moment. I'm going to do exactly the same thing now on this side. I'm right-handed, so I ought to do things right-handed. I probably get do it a bit easier that way. And put its twin in. So I mentioned you sometimes got to go through these rings the right way. It's not so bad on this particular weave. There are some of the others, like what's called a half Persian, where that matters quite a bit. So what I do now is form this into the Byzantine shape. And I will put a ring through. And I'm going to do the same now on the other side. So I'm going to form that. This is where you need sort of 4 hands. And I also have to just make sure I don't have a twist in this. So I want that to be that way, I think. Is that going to be... Well, I'm going to close this up and then I'll check whether I've got a twist. So I'll just roughly close it. Try not... Well, I won't lose where it is. So have I got a twist in this, or is that... Nope, that's correct. So what I'll do now is just close that ring up again properly. If I'd twisted it 180 degrees, it probably would have irritated whoever got to wear it eventually. The fact that you couldn't straighten it out. Okay, that is one completed byzantine stretchy bracelet. Oops. Let me put it, see if I can put it on. I can't. It's a bit small for me. Because it shouldn't really look. I mean, I don't know if you can see, but it looks slightly stretched. It's a bit the wrong size for me. It probably should have been about half an inch bigger for me, but you know, these things are made to size, and this isn't for me. So that's not a problem. So I shall just roll it off my hand. I'm probably more 8.5 inch than 7. I think this was 8 or 7 3/4. There we go. That's that one. Now I was going to do this one, but I think I'm going to start a new one. So we'll do this one maybe later or possibly tomorrow and finish this one off. So I will put that one. That's kind of more like that you know, dark lagoon with bright sunlight, isn't it? The bright yellow sun. And that's probably what it sort of reminds me of, so I might have to think of a name that is suitable for that. I shall just put that to one side, and I'll just put these rings away so I don't lose them. They're not especially cheap, shall we say. I don't want to lose any of them. And my yellow ones. Because what I want to do is work with some of these. Oops, I didn't mean to get that many out. Let me put them down on the bench without losing them. Yeah, this is where I should have some sort of pad so I don't, because these will bounce like mad. See if I can pick one up and I'll show you what it looks like. There we go. A little green crystal. I wish they were, Fear Reaper. I wish they were. Because I wouldn't be doing anything with them, I'd be selling them. And let me just get a couple of these ones out. There we go. Now actually Swarovski Crystal, I think that's how it's pronounced. So we're going to try and make something with those. And you've got some really fine wire rings here. So I'll show you how we do what we're going to do next in a moment. I'll just open 5 of these to start with. And find the ends. One of these days I'm actually going to do this with some sterling silver rings. I'm going to make myself a bracelet with sterling silver. These rings are all aluminium, and they're anodized, which basically means there's two things basically. They don't tarnish, and they keep the shininess. Now then, in theory, and this is where I'm going to find out if I'm right, I'm hoping I can put 2 rings through that loop. We shall see. This is going to be a little fiddly, I can imagine. If this doesn't work, then I give up at this point. Yes, I can. There we go. Good. It's going to work. So I've put 1 crystal on there. One. I'm just trying to think. 2. Yeah. I might have to do this again, and my brain's not especially working tonight. So I've got 2 little crystals on. The wire on this rings are 0.8 millimeters in diameter. So basically they're quite tiny. They're not the smallest rings that I work with, but why am I closing that ring? I'm asking myself that question because I'm not meant to. I'm meant to put another one of these crystals on it before I close it. Now it's perfectly okay to open the rings and close them again like that. If I was to do it about 20 or 30 times, then the ring starts to become unstable. And will sort of snap sometimes, but that's not it. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4. I could have sworn it was 5 rings across. I can't count. Okay, so that's what I've made. Now I make another one of those. Theme Hospital, good evening. Sorry I didn't catch you earlier. We've got creams around here somewhere, which who reminded me you dragged me in. You dragged her in. So there we go. That's that unit. Things like that get called a unit. It's a unit of the design. So sometimes you'll hear me call things like a unit, and that's what I'm referring to. It's sort of the smallest part of the design will stand alone. And so if I was talking about this, for example, a unit is these two rings and possibly the two blue ones or the two yellow ones. And 3D Bloke, good evening, welcome to the studio. You're getting to see something different tonight. So I've finished one thing. I'm not going to finish another. That's this will easily take an hour or so to do. So we don't have that much time left. But I will be continuing it with it. Okay, I want some of these clear crystals out. I'm going to tip these out carefully onto the desk. I don't want to lose them. Not all. Fiddly little things, but there we go. It's a problem. Well, I say it's a problem, but it's one of the things about little tiny rings like this and the dainty crystals. They're fiddly to work with, but you get some quite spectacular results out of it. Oh, I call them spectacular, but they're really lovely results you can get out sometimes. So I've got to hold that in just the right position, sort of, so that I can get the next ring in there. Now the frustrating bit would be if this slips out of my fingers. There we go. It didn't. With most weaves, this being we've done it again. This being one of them. It's when you start that's the real hardest bit, because you've not got anything to hold on to, and you lose. You quite often end up starting more than once, just because some of these, what they call weaves, the rings, won't actually. Well, that one's broken. Won't actually stay in position unless until you get more rings on. So already, that I can repair later, but that crystal has just become unstuck. So I'll put another one in its place. Yeah. And this time, before I close this ring, I'll put the last crystal on for this unit, because that's what I've been forgetting to do. There we go. And then the final ring of this unit. What I'll then do is I'll join the two units I've just created together, which will be the start of the bracelet. Yeah, indeed, free, but it's only like cleaning out the nozzle of an airbrush. That's an extremely fiddly thing to do with a 0.2 or 0.15 hole in it, but you manage it without a problem, without damaging your nozzle. So there we go, that's the second unit. What I'm going to do with these is silver, green, silver, but what I'm thinking of doing on the ends is all silver. Just 3 silver, so that it sort of fully encloses the green. Now then, to join those together I need some even smaller rings. It makes you swear a lot. I just take a deep breath. So I'll put those down there. I'm not getting a lot out. And I need to open 4 of these, and you thought those other rings were small. There's even smaller. These are about the smallest rings. I think these are the smallest rings I work with. So I need to open 4 of these. The bit that I'm about to do, which is join those 2 units together, will be quite fiddly. And if there's any swearing to be heard, that'll be when it happens. It's unlikely, but that's when it will be. Just because there's not a lot to hold on to, and everything sort of, nothing will go where you want it to go when you're doing that for the first time. The first ring actually isn't so bad. One through there, and then we just hang that. Providing I get it the right way. That way, yeah. As I said, the ring's break. That actually is quite an unusual occurrence. Is that? Have I done that the right way? No, I haven't. That wants to go through there. That's correct. I think I've only had about 5 rings break ever. Okay, so now I've joined those 2 units together, but what I've now got to do is, as you can see, it's even hard to hold them, but sort of fold them back on each other. Yeah, but you kind of need well, I suppose you need binocular microscopes, because you need the stereo vision. Otherwise it would be quite challenging, shall we say, to sort of work out where everything is. In space. Silver rings are also quite difficult to work with, because with everything silver around it, it can sometimes be quite difficult to see the ring itself against the silver background, and it kind of reflects everything as well. So I'm trying to sort of keep hold of these things so that I can there we go. Once these first 2 are done, the next one's get a bit easier. Right, and I need to open 1 more ring because I broke that one. This is where you need about 16 hands with fingers as tiny as sort of hairs. Okay. See if I can just layer this out for the moment, and say it'll get better, but as I put more units on, it'll become a lot easier. It'll stand a lot better. Yep, that may well be the case. Free. I had a quick look yesterday. I couldn't really see any. I wasn't even sure what the cup size was. Most of the badger brushes looked as though they had a common cup size, but I could only see caps for. Was it the L series, L100 series? 2, 3, 4. Right, and now a white. Yep, close this ring. Oops, it made a bid for escape then, but didn't succeed. Some rings do that. Some actually succeed. And you might think, well, you guys don't know, but I've got a green carpet here. And you might think things like bright blue rings and bright orange rings, etc., wouldn't be able to. You couldn't lose them on a green carpet. Yeah, you can. They can be right in front of your eyes on the green carpet, and you still can't see the things. Okay. Is it a standard? Oops, is it? Now you might have just heard that click. That was the pliers snapping shut because they slipped off the needle. Sorry, off the ring. Now what I'm just doing is just looking at that ring to see if it got scratched. Because if it did, I'll throw the ring away. Anodizing is fairly robust, but it will scratch if you apply something sharp enough to it, or strong enough, shall we say. Can't see anything, so I think that's okay. So you do have to take a little bit of care with these, but no more than you would, for example, any other jewellery. In fact, probably speaking, it's probably a bit more robust than most others. Certainly, it's probably more robust than sort of silver plate or gold plated jewellery is. I'm trying to do this with a pair of tweezers, what I could probably do a lot easier with my fingers. I just can't see it as well with my fingers. There we go. And the final ring of the unit. Is there, and then we'll join this one onto the two that we've already done. Actually, just whilst I remember, where have I done with it? I was going to show you the clasp that I have for this, but I've misplaced it, which is worrying me a little bit because it's a sterling silver clasp. And sterling silver isn't cheap. There it is. So this is the clasp that we'll be using. So it's got 4 rings on the side which will join the other 4 rings to. Jose Galan, good evening. Welcome to the studio this evening. You have to watch a film for your replay. Okay, have a good evening. Thank you for dropping in. And this is how it comes. So we'll join one half to one side, one half to the other, and then it just clips in like that. It's held in with a magnet, so it's quite strong. So that's the clasp we'll be using when we get that far. I could put half of it on now, but I'm not going to. So now I want 4 of these little tiny rings again. Oh, I'm not doing too bad. Okay, now join these together. Despite the fact that these plier noses are really small, they still sometimes have a problem getting in. Yeah, that wants to go that way through there and come up through that one. Got to make sure the ring goes through the right way, otherwise they'll, one of the units will be upside down. That thing I was mentioning about patience, that's about now that's coming into operation. Okay, I've got that held in my hand roughly where I want it. Now what I'm going to do is, you're going to end up doing a lot of this stuff single-handed and sort of really occasionally holding things really awkwardly. Right, I want that to go through there, and I want it to come up through that ring there, like that. Now I try and do just what I've just done again. Yeah, this time it was easy, and now it just looks like a big knot of rings at the moment. As I say, the more you add, the more it looks correct. But this is at the stage where, you know, everything is kind of all jumbled up, and you can actually end up with these things being in complete knots. Right, those are the two rings that I want to go together. And cocktail sticks I've found to be really useful. I probably can get like metal picks as well. That probably have a good idea, but yeah, that's the third one, or the fourth one. Now then, can I start to lay this out so you can see what's going on? Maybe, maybe not. But we're starting to form a kind of a very lacy pattern. Why is the black background dark? Behind me, because this with the positioning of this light, it's reflecting into, you're getting the light's going directly into this camera here, and what's happening is it's adjusting its exposure, which is darkening the background. But it's really hard to position a light and a camera for you to see what's going on, and with stuff like this, it needs quite good light. And we are zoomed in quite a bit on this so you can actually see things, because these rings are little tiny things. I forgot what size are they? Yeah, 2, 3, about 3.5 millimeters across are these little tiny, the smallest rings that I've just been using. Oops. Oh well, that's down on the desk, so I shall put another unit together. And this is kind of the rinse and repeat way of working. There's going to be something like 27 plus of those units to construct to create a full bracelet. KB Kenji, thank you very much for following. That is really kind of you, thank you. Oh, that's okay. That's not a problem. I can understand things get fascinating sometimes, and you just get lost in what's going on. He says. The fluffy cat is just out of shot. Fortunately, shall I say, that's not the case. Haven't seen. No. I'll rephrase what I was about to say because it didn't sound right. We haven't seen either of the cats in the studio for a few days now. Junior's not been up at all. Felix has popped in and popped straight back out, more or less, over the past few days, but not during the stream. It's rather warm up here, and I think it's a bit warm for them, so have sort of been hiding away downstairs. Junior's actually found himself a new favourite position to sort of curl up in at the moment, and he's kind of keeping my wife company downstairs. By which you've just gathered my studio is upstairs. I've done it again. I've closed that ring. But I need that ring open in order to put a green crystal across. And don't worry, if either of the cats do turn up, I will of course turn the camera on them, provided they stay off the studio space, because I do not want pussy cats trying to curl up in this space with all these rings and crystals on, especially with the crystals. I don't know if you're familiar, anybody's familiar with Swarovski crystals, but they're I keep going on about price because I'm a Yorkshireman, you see. We make the archetypal Scotsman look extremely generous. So I don't want any of these scattering anywhere. Yeah, since Kebakenji just very kindly followed the studio. What I will do is just remind anybody else who may be watching that is interested. Push that follow button. Join the followers of the studio. I'd be grateful. Of course, if you don't want to, that's all right. So another unit. So I now want another 4 of those little tiny rings, which I will then join onto the chain we've got so far. Quite often what I'd normally do is just sit down at the start and open all of these rings in one go rather than doing them a bit at a time like this, but it saves you guys getting a little bit bored watching me just open rings. Right. This is starting to get long enough to hold itself in position, and that makes it, as I mentioned, it makes it easier at that point to keep extending it. So that's that way, that's coming up, it's going to come up through the underneath of that, like that. Yeah, that's right. Sometimes these little tiny rings, your pliers actually get in the way. There almost isn't enough room for the pliers and the rings to go on a ring. So now you're getting an idea just how much effort goes into creating some of these jewellery. Right. That's what it's starting to look like now. Okay, we'll do one more unit. Now I'm going to need 4 large rings and 4 small rings. And just to prove I can count, that's 1. That's 2. 3. And 4. So just to be different, that's number 5. 6. 7. 8. And for the mathematicians amongst you, if I needed to count more than 1024, I'd have to take my socks off. Right. So, silver. And before I forget, we put a green on there. And this time I remembered to put the crystal on. Which is going to not go quite where I want it to go, which is just for me to hold it in place, but that's when it gets a bit frustrating. And that's the 4th ring, and another unit. It kept crashing to overclock it. I see. It's probably queuing too many things then. Either or something like the memory bus was operating too fast or something. Right. No. Bother. And there we go with the tiny rings again. That one through that one and up through there. I just joined that in completely the wrong place. Now what we're going to do is find where the join is. It's there. Right. Let's see if I can get this in the right place this time. Indeed, good evening. Welcome to the studio this evening. As Fluffy Twiglet just mentioned, unfortunately it is getting quite close to the end of the stream. But hopefully you'll enjoy what you see before we get quite that far. Have yeah. For the minute then I thought I'd just done exactly the same thing again. Right. Through there and through that one, like that. And then the final one, There we go. And as you can see, as this gets longer, it will actually get a lot easier to hold, and it'll actually look more like a bracelet. Or more like a band anyway, which is what we're after. Now then, Fluffy Twiglet, I wonder, what could we do on tomorrow's stream? You know, I'm not quite sure. We could do some glass blowing. We're not going to, but we could. There we go. So that's 5 units, about at least another 22 to go to complete it. But that will be enough for tonight. Can't get quite putting it on the desk, but I can't quite get it to sit properly. But once it's got more on it, and once it's got the two end parts of that clasp on, they will hold it everything in place, and it will just it will just sit nicely then. But until then, unfortunately, it looks a little bit untidy. That's you know, it's just what some, as I mentioned earlier, some weaves will look untidy, but then, you know, as you put them on, they'll settle down and look correct, and some just always look untidy because they're just not suited to the weave that's been done. But there we go. That's down on the desk, and let me do them back in on the desk level. So we've started that. We finished this one. A nice stretchy bracelet. I may start tomorrow by finishing this, and then going back to the crystal. But I think that's it for now. So I'm going to say is, as I usually say, if there's anybody watching that isn't following, then I would be grateful if you wanted to, if you would follow. That would be fantastic. On the other hand, if you just want a notification, then you are quite welcome to follow me on Twitter. The details will, as usual, be on the end plate, but they are also below the stream window. But quite simply, it's @Zaragonart. On the other hand, if you'd just like to try and catch me on tomorrow night's stream, it will be around 8 PM UK time, 1900 hours GMT, or about 2 hours 10 minutes ago in whatever time zone you're in. That was 8 PM UK time, so it will be that time tomorrow, where we shall carry on with this jewellery. Thank you all for watching. It has been fun, and I hope to see you tomorrow. Bye bye.